The deaths in Afghanistan have prompted Australian Prime Minister Julia Gillard to cut short her visit to the Cook Islands for the Pacific Islands Forum. Her place will be taken by her Parliamentary Secretary for Pacific Islands Affairs, Richard Marles. Pacific correspondent Sean Dorney is in Rarotonga. Sean, what impact will Julia Gillard's absence from the leaders' retreat have on the forum's deliberations?
Well, she's obviously going to be missed. This is supposed to be a leaders' negotiation, but Richard Marles has visited a lot of these Pacific countries, and from my impressions, and I've travelled with him quite a bit, he is quite well known and well liked, so Australia probably doesn't lose everything by not having Julia Gillard there. And Richard Marles has, as I said, travelled extensively around the region and is on top of all these Pacific issues.
Before her departure, the Australian Prime Minister revealed a significant gender initiative for the Pacific. Can you fill us in on the details?
Yes, Jim, a substantial initiative. She announced more than $300 million is going to be spent by Australia over the next 10 years on various gender initiatives. There are three strands to this. The first is to try and encourage more female parliamentarians in the Pacific. The Pacific is dreadfully underrepresented. She gave a figure of 5% of the members of parliament through the Pacific are women, compared with a world average of something like 18%. The second strand is to help women in business, and that's going to cover a whole range of things. But one of the things that Julia Gillard did mention is that it's going to be spent on markets. Some of it will be spent on markets. A lot of women in the Pacific are gardeners, and they produce a lot of the food and they sell that through the markets. She said there's going to be a system of improving markets throughout the Pacific with lighting and sanitation and clean water and waste disposal. The third strand of this is violence against women, and there's a recognition, even from the leaders of the Pacific, that violence against women is a huge problem in the Pacific, and she announced that quite a bit of this money would go towards trying to address that particular problem. Peter O'Neill, the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, had this to say.
A very timely initiative at that, in addressing some of our gender issues relating to women in the region. I can only speak for Papua New Guinea and its experiences in this. I'm sure many of you in this room know that Papua New Guinea is a very male-dominated society. Although half the population of 7 million is a woman population, we still have a long way to go.
Fiji's still suspended from the forum. Some Pacific nations would like Fiji invited back in. Is that likely to happen?
No, I think what we're going to see in the final resolution is an encouragement for Fiji to continue down the road towards these elections in late 2014. But we've heard from the Papua New Guinea Prime Minister and also from Julia Gillard that their position is that you need to have a democratically elected government before Fiji regains full admission back to the forum, and at this stage that would be in 2015. There was a bit of a concession given to Fiji when the Pacific Island countries met without Australia and New Zealand yesterday as members of the Pacific, African and Caribbean group. In their dealings with the European Union, those countries want Fiji to be included. At the moment that's being dealt with through the forum, but Peter O'Neill has offered to host a meeting in Port Moresby in October so that all the countries can get together with Fiji and let that progress towards these negotiations with the European Union make some headway.
The big international visitor to this year's forum is US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. What impact is she making, and how significant, by the by, is the Chinese delegation?
Well, it's interesting. Everyone's pretty excited about Hillary Clinton coming here, but that's also tempered by the fact that they feel that her visit is sort of overshadowing everything else that is happening here. But whenever you ask anyone, what do you think of this? They think it's terrific that she is coming. And it's going to be the highest representation, of course, that the United States has ever had at a Pacific Islands Forum. The Chinese delegation is going to be fairly significant as well. The Chinese are pouring a lot more aid and soft loans into the Pacific than America is. There was one interesting thing I found out about today, Jim, is that the organisers have asked the people who printed the program to remove Taiwan's name from the list of delegations, because Taiwan also turns up here, but it is only allowed to meet with those countries that recognise Taiwan. So there'll probably be a separate meeting with Taiwan, but they've actually been erased from the official program.